like people. No,
Oh, that's what we're about.
Get a little tired. Everybody asked me that question though. It's like I should be playing piano or something. Not the same.
Stop, Brad. Yeah.
each one is 5 people. Okay? This is the,
Oh, yeah, it's 3 rows.
okay?
So that's the side.
These are 5 people with
On the side.
side 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
This is from 12. And this, yeah, 12. This is row 7,
All right, that's
8, 9, 10. This is row 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, she clearly didn't hear all that.
But because they were saying the jury office can't do anything, they have to hold their capability. So they did rows of 5, rows of 5, and I said, why are you doing 12 a year? And then he had Don Aaron help him.
I have a question. I mean, the only thing I can do with it is
No, that's yours. I'll drink water. I'll fish. See it for a minute.
just drinking it. Tomorrow's Saturday, last time I checked.
I'm good. Good. I'll just stick my mouth. I'm good.
You're so ridiculous. That's straight water. You're just being ridiculous. Yes, we started. So as long as it can go, I'll go check it all out and bring it up
Are you giving you the paper? Well, tell me you'll do that one stash.
Thank you.
Because move that table, we'll have a white, jury.
I've heard.
You have no idea.
You just said, and I knew you would not know this was okay. So it was just right at least like 11 or 12 years ago, I had another character in a murder trial. And I have kids. And you, John Garcia. Yeah, with Judge Lynette. I had no idea who the
John Garcia.
Yeah, I got taken to serve. He was guilty. It was, I think, it was, I don't know if the original charge was second degree murder or if it was first degree, we found it a little lesser. I remember the second degree was that high. It was something about a stabbing and it was somewhere on the road, almost over Boulevard. I don't think they were homeless.
Benny Rodriguez.
know why I'm going to be watching this.
Was that Judge Burnett? Because I remember I was helping somebody, or was it Crystal Lawrence?
No, it wasn't Chris, that wasn't. No.
It was past case of trial for the beginning.
Is that what it was?
I've never been on, I've been on.
7 years? Like 5 to 7 years?
We went to the specialty restaurants, right? So, do you understand what it is? Almost about 150.
I've never been there. Do you like it? That is like in Central Park, right? Was that any, it's more real portion? Is that?
It's a little clients here, it's more money, it's $45. We bought the package.
Yeah.
We bought the 3-night package.
It's illegal.
It's not even
All right, court back in session, remain seated.
Let's see, Rosevelt's not back up yet. We can proceed with that? Okay. Let me, before we bring him in though, which juror is this, 10-2?
10-1.
10-1. Let me just,
Oh, this is a special.
10-1 is Miss Wilson. Shauna Wilson. She's handed the deputy a note. She's asked me for a hardship. I'm just wondering whether we need to keep her around here. She suffers from severe IBS. So why don't I just let her go now so we don't hang around. You want to just go ahead and bring Miss Wilson in first, 10-1. I'm just going to let her go. I'm not even going to make her explain anything to me.
Juror 10-1.
Miss Wilson?
Hi.
We're going to go ahead and release you.
Okay.
Okay, so, well, here's what you need to do. Just brief instructions. Go downstairs, turn your juror badge in on the first floor. You're released, don't have to come back. Just don't discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out. That's all you need to tell you. Thank you, ma'am.
Juror 7-4. You gotta go right that microphone. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Morales, counsel, you may be seated. Mr. Morales, I think you indicated to us that you may know something about the case. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and is that based on things that you may have seen or read in the news?
That is correct.
All right. And would that be recently or in the past or both?
Both.
Okay. When we say both, let's talk about the past. How long ago in terms of past?
Started on the program Cops, and I'm a news junkie, so it was pretty much blasted on the papers, on the internet.
All right, so you've seen it. Would it be fair to say that you've seen it from multiple sources?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, let me ask you just a couple of questions before I get any details about what you may have seen or heard. Based on what you have seen or heard or read about this case, Have you reached any conclusions about the case?
Just based on what I've seen, I don't feel I can be impartial in this case.
All right, so it would affect, what you've seen or read or heard will affect you, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and release you from jury service in this case. You will not have to come back on Monday. Simply go to the first floor, turn that juror badge in, do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Juror 7-5.
Ms. Roth, if you could just come up to that microphone right there. We've got standing counsel. You may be seated. I think you indicated that you knew something about the case and also you want to speak to me about a hardship. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
We'll start with knowledge. Do you know something about this case based on things you may have seen or read
Yes.
in the news? All right. Was that in the past or recently?
No, that was in the past.
In the past. And when you say in the past, what do you mean by that?
Probably around August.
August of this year?
Yeah.
All right. Do you recall reading or seeing anything about the case prior to August of this year?
Yes.
Okay. And again, how far back would that go?
Probably when it first happened, like in 2009.
Okay. So going back to when the alleged events occurred.
Yes.
All right. Now, so you first saw or read something about the case back in 2009. Since that time forward, have you kept track of the progress of the case or what's been happening in the case?
No.
Do you know what's been happening in the case since then?
Yes.
Can you tell me what you know?
I know that she tried to kill her husband, and the hitman was an undercover detective, and this is the second trial, and she's been on house arrest since then.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, ma'am, we're going to release you from jury service in this
Okay.
case. Hang on, I'm just going to give you instructions, that's all. You don't have to come back, but turn your juror badge in on the first floor where we began this morning. Do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Juror 7-6.
Mr. Cabral, if you just come right up to this microphone right here. And counsel, you may be seated. I think you indicated that you may know something about the case and also you'd like to speak to me about hardship. Is that right?
Yes.
Let's start with knowledge. Do you know something about this case based on things you may have seen or read in the news?
Yes, I've seen the episode of Cops, and I've seen it on the news also.
Okay, so you've seen the episode Cops, and you've also, when you say seen the news, you've seen things on television?
Yes.
Okay, and Cops was in the past, correct? Not recently?
Yeah, in the
Okay. Let me just ask you a couple of questions before I get more specific about what you may have seen or read. Based on what you saw, whether it be on Cops or on the news, or anything that you may have read, based on that, have you reached any conclusions about this case?
I feel like I have.
Okay, and what is that conclusion?
That the defendant is guilty.
Okay, thank you very much. That's what we need to know. We're going to go ahead and excuse you from jury service in this case. You will not need to come back. All you have to do is go downstairs, first floor, jury assembly room where you started.
Yes.
Turn that badge in. Please do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out.
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror 7-7.
Ms. Karwowski?
Yes.
Okay, if you can walk up to that mic if you would. Counsel, you may be seated. I believe you raised a hand indicating you had some knowledge of this case and also that you wanted to speak to me about a hardship. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, let's start with your knowledge of the case. Do you know things about this case or believe you know things about this case based on things you may have seen or read in the news?
Yes,
Okay, and was that recently or in the past?
in the past,
Okay, when we say past, what are we talking about? How long ago?
when the event happened.
Okay, when the alleged events occurred back in 2009. Is that correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
And did you see things at that time on the television or did you read things in the
Both.
paper or both? Okay. Since that time, have you kept track of what's going on in the case?
No,
All right. Do you know what has been going on in the case since that time?
No.
All right. Couple questions. Now, you said you saw and read about it in the past. Have you also read about it or seen anything about the case recently?
No.
All right. When do you think the last time is that you saw or read anything about the case?
It was in the immediate aftermath.
Immediately after,
Right.
but nothing since?
No.
Okay. Now, let me ask you about your reaction to what you read or saw back in 2009. Based on what you either read or saw, or heard for that matter, have you reached any conclusions about this case?
I did.
Okay, and what was your conclusion?
My conclusion was that the defendant did what she's accused of.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to excuse you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday.
Okay.
Simply go to the first floor, turn that juror badge in. Just don't discuss anything with the other potential jurors on the way out. You're discharged. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Juror 7-8.
Mr. Sayre, if you just come forward to that microphone. Counsel, you may be seated. I believe you indicated you thought you knew something about the case, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that based on things you may have seen or read in the paper or in the news?
Yes,
Okay. Was it in the past or recently or both?
both.
Okay. When we talk about the past, how long ago?
The inception of the case,
Okay, back in when the alleged events occurred back in 2009?
yes.
All right. Okay, and have you kept up with the case since that time?
Yes.
And do you know what's happened in the case since that time?
There was, I believe, a conviction. I believe there was maybe an appeal, and that was not sustained. And there is a retrial, now there's a retrial based on either new evidence or a glitch.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and excuse you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. All you have to do is go downstairs, turn the juror badge in. Do not discuss anything about the case with the other potential jurors, but you're discharged at this time with our thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Juror 7-9.
Mr. Westfall, if you just come forward to that microphone right there, if you would. Counsel, you may be seated. All right, sir, I think you indicated you may know something about the case. Is that correct?
I've been following it since '09 when it was originally.
Okay, and when you say following it, would that include seeing reporting of it on television and also reading about it?
Just on the television reporting only.
Okay, television reporting only. All right, but you've been, in your words, following it since 2009. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So can you tell me what you know, if anything, about what's been happening in the case since 2009?
I really can't, other than I believe that they had the trial and she was convicted, I believe, and now we're up for a retrial.
Okay, thank you. We're going to release you from jury service in this case. You will not need to come back on Monday. Simply go to the first floor, turn that juror badge in the jury assembly room where you started, and do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Westfall? Oh, the next one. No, I don't. High Cook? High Cook. Cook is CO. Thank you. Mr. Pycook, if you could come up to that microphone, please. Counsel, you may be seated. You indicated that you may know something about the case. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is that based on things you may have seen or read in the news?
Yes, sir.
Was that things that you've seen or read recently, in the past, or both?
Both.
Okay. When we talk about past, how far back?
Back when the original trial was?
Back when the original trial?
Yes.
Okay, so you're aware that there was a previous trial?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. We're going to release you from jury service in this case. It will not be necessary for you to come back on Monday. We're going to go ahead and discharge you. All you have to do is go turn that juror badge in downstairs, and don't talk with anyone on the way out, but you're discharged. Have a pleasant weekend.
Thank you.
7:10, yes.
Juror 8-1.
Tell me one more time.
Shahinian.
Shahinian, okay, Ms. Shahinian. You indicated, I believe, that you knew something or thought you knew something about the case, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and is that based on things you may have seen or read in the news?
Correct.
Okay, and would that be recently, in the past, or both?
Both.
Okay, so when we say in the past, are you talking about how far back?
Oh, a couple, 3 years probably.
3 years, okay. Do you recall reading or hearing anything about the case back in 2009 when the alleged events occurred?
I don't really recall.
Okay, but you do recall 2 or 3 years ago hearing about the case?
Right.
And have you been keeping up with the progress of the case, what's been happening in the case for that period of time?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me just generally what do you know about the case and what's been going on in the case?
So I know she was convicted. I know she was granted a new trial for, I believe, jury, something to do with the jury.
Okay, good enough. All right, ma'am, we're going to release you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. All you have to do is go downstairs, turn that badge into the jury assembly room. Please do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Juror 8-2.
Is it Ms. Hurrell? Counsel may be seated. Now, did you indicate that you thought you knew something about the case?
Just barely. All I know is that it's a new trial, that she already had a trial previously.
Okay, that's what I want to know. So you realize or you know that there was a trial before? Okay.
Yes.
All right, we're going to excuse you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. Please don't discuss anything about this case with the other potential jurors on the way out. Thank you very much, ma'am. Just turn the juror badge in on the first floor.
Okay.
Juror 83.
All right, Ms. Seitz, is it?
Yes.
Okay, now counsel may be seated. Did you indicate that you thought you might know something about this case?
Yes.
Okay. And is that from things you may have seen or read on the news?
Yeah, I watched it unfold way back.
In
years ago.
2009?
Yes.
Okay. Have you kept up with the case since then?
I saw where I think it was her husband, didn't believe her and they got divorced, I think. Can't remember.
Okay. In terms of what's been happening in the case since 2009, have you read or seen anything? Do you know what's been going on? Okay. Now, have you read or seen anything recently about the case?
No.
All right. So just trying to figure out the last time you really saw or read anything about the case, would it be back in 2009?
Correct.
All right. So since then, you haven't followed the case and you haven't read anything else about the case or seen anything about the case. Okay. Let me talk to you about what you may have seen or read or heard back in 2009. Based on what you saw, read, or heard, did you reach any conclusions about the case?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that conclusion?
Guilty.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. We're going to go ahead and discharge you. I've just got to give you a few instructions. We're going to discharge you from jury service in this case. All you have to do is turn that juror badge in on the first floor where you started, and do not discuss anything about the case with the other jurors on the way out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Juror 84.
Ms. Volp? Okay, if you could just approach that microphone, and counsel, you may be seated. I think you indicated that you may know something about the case. Is that correct?
A little bit. I just remember hearing about it.
Okay. Did that come from the news, reading or seeing something?
The news.
Okay.
The cops.
Did you see the show Cops?
I believe I did at the time, yes.
At the time, you believed you saw the show Cops. Back when we say at the time, are you talking about around the time when the alleged events occurred back in 2009?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. And back then, did you also, in addition to reviewing or seeing the television show Cops, did you see any news coverage on the television about the case?
A little bit.
All right.
Minimal.
Did you read anything about the case?
Nope.
Okay. Since then, have you read anything about the case, seen anything on television?
Nope.
Okay, so the last time you really saw or read anything about the case was back around 2009 when the alleged events occurred, or whatever time the show Cops aired. I don't know what the date would be, but so that's the last time you've actually seen anything about the case?
Correct.
Okay, before I get into what you actually recall seeing, based on what you did see or what you did read, have you reached any conclusions about the case?
Not really, no.
Okay. Based on what you saw or read about the case, do you have any opinions about the case?
I mean, minimal. Her husband was a jerk, then maybe things could have gone that way. I mean, things like that.
Okay. Let me kind of rephrase the question a little bit. First of all, who would you be speaking to when you said if her husband was a jerk? Maybe
Just like in a circle of friends type
Okay.
thing.
Do you recall discussing the case with friends?
A little bit.
Okay. And were any opinions expressed about the case during those discussions?
I guess nothing in particular, no.
Anything you can recall?
I guess just words like I just said. Just,
Okay.
you know.
Now, let me ask you just a couple more questions. I'll get into what you did see or hear. But based on what you saw, heard, or read, have you reached any opinions? Do you have any 2009?
The main thing that stuck out of my head, I guess, was when she was in interrogation, and I guess she thought her husband was dead, and he came into the room. I sort of remember that happening.
Okay, so you remember that's an interrogation film. Do you remember anything else? Any other videos, anything else?
No, that's the one that really stuck out in my head.
Okay, so that stuck out in your head. And you've told me based on that, well, let me ask it. Based on that video, which showed an interrogation and her husband to serve on this jury, you're going to be required to decide the case based on the evidence and only the evidence that's presented in the courtroom and on the law that I instruct you. You're not going to be able to consider and cannot come into your deliberations anything you may have seen, read, or heard outside of this courtroom. You need a little more certainty. And if you can't give that certainty either, I'm not trying to pry you to giving certainty that you don't have. So if you don't have certainty, that's fine. I just need to drill down on that answer a little bit. So I'm going to basically ask the question again. Can you do that? Can you set those things aside, decide this case based on the evidence and the law?
I'm not totally sure.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that you have a reasonable doubt as to whether or not you can set those matters aside and decide this? And when I say those matters, I'm talking about what you saw on Cops, the TV, and what you may have read. Is there a reasonable doubt in your mind as to whether or not you can set those things aside and decide this case based solely on the evidence?
I really don't know, actually.
Okay. Okay.
Juror 85.
Mr. Graham, if you can come up to this, so we got this standing mic up here, if you can just come up to that microphone. Counsel, you may be seated. I think, Mr. Graham, you indicated that you may know something about the case. Is that correct?
From what you told us yesterday, yeah.
Okay.
But that said, nothing more.
Okay, let me see if I understand. Have you, I mean, yesterday I read you a statement, and I read that same statement to you today. Other than the statement I read to you yesterday and today, have you read anything about the case, seen anything about the case on television? Do you know anything about the case?
Not really, no.
Okay, so when you were raising your hand about knowing about the case, was it based solely on the fact that I read that statement to you yesterday before I asked you to come back?
I think so. I'm kind of confused, sorry.
Okay, let me see if I can, what I'm trying to find out is if you know anything about the case or knew anything about the case or believed you knew anything about the case before you actually came to jury service yesterday.
No.
Okay, so you did not, prior to, at any time, you did not see anything on the news about the case, read anything in the paper about the case, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah, okay, you have not, okay. Counsel, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Claypool?
Just a couple.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Do you watch local TV or what's going on?
Not really.
Do you read the newspapers?
No.
How about the internet? Do you ever do any searches on the internet?
Yeah, like Facebook or something like that.
Okay. Have you ever heard about the case at all about a woman allegedly trying to hire a hitman and kill her husband? You ever learn about that?
No.
All right, thank you, Ron.
All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Graham. What we're going to ask you to do is to come back 9:30 on Monday for continuation of jury selection.
Okay.
What you have to do is when you come back at 9:30, all you need to do is go to the first floor where you started, that jury assembly room. You'll sign in down there and wait. They'll tell you when to come back up. Please do not communicate with anybody about the case. Please do not do any research concerning the case, and do not listen to or read any news accounts of the trial or do any type of internet search relating to the case. With that said, we're going to let you go for the weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Have a pleasant weekend, sir.
Thanks.
See you on Monday. Juror 86.
Ms. Duffy, if you could just come forward to this standing mic that we have here. Counsel, you may be seated. Ms. Duffy, you indicated that you believe you may know something about the case. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Locally and nationally.
Okay, so is that based on things that you've either read or seen in the news?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was that recently or in the past or both?
Both.
All right. And when we say past, how far back are you talking?
When it was aired on Cops and on the 6 o'clock news before then also.
Okay, so you've seen this case, or what you believe to be this case, reported on Cops, is that correct? Okay, in addition to that, you also saw news coverage on the local channels?
Correct.
And you've seen some national, when you say national, are you referring to Cops or referring to, okay, just Cops, okay. And have you also read anything about the case?
I have not.
Okay. Now, you indicated that you became aware of the case when initially when the alleged events occurred. Have you been keeping track of the case since then? You know what's been going on in the case since then?
No, sir.
Okay.
Well, I know that there was a trial before.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. All right, Stuffy, we're going to
Juror 87.
Mr. Moore, if you could come up to that microphone for me. The one that's standing mic there, right there. And counsel, you may be seated. All right, now, Mr. Moore, I believe you indicated you didn't know anything about the case, but you wanted to speak to me about a hardship. Is that right?
It's really kind of a limitation. I have a hearing loss with ringing in my ears. I'm wearing my hearing aid today, and I'll wear it for the trial as well. Typically, I've done this before, juries, and I'll miss something, 5%, something, with the ringing and just the way the hearing aid is.
Okay.
It's more of a limitation.
Okay. I'm going to kind of explore that limitation a little bit. Just let me ask this. So you're disclosing this to us so we know about it. Is there anything else that would prevent you, though, from sitting if you were chosen?
There's nothing that would prevent me from sitting. I just think I should disclose it to
Okay.
you.
Now, when you had prior jury service, was it here in Palm Beach County?
Asheville, North Carolina, and Annapolis, Maryland.
Okay. We have here in this courthouse a hearing assisted device. I realize you have the hearing aids, but it's a device that you can put on that is keyed directly to these microphones. And so whatever we say in these microphones will be actually placed right into that hearing device. I don't have one here in the courtroom I can show you, but, oh, you do?
Right there. No, on the top right.
We don't have to put it on. I'm just going to show it to him.
Okay.
So what we have are these devices that you can wear, and they're keyed directly into this microphone. And I'll use the microphone. The attorneys will be using the microphone. The witness will be using a microphone, and they will amplify everything that's said in the courtroom. If we were to do that for you, you think you'd be okay?
I think I'll be fine.
Okay. What we may do, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you to return on Monday, and we're probably going to give you one of those devices and let you try it out. And if there's still a problem, then you can tell us about it. And but if there's not a problem, I want to make sure that you're available and you can hear. Sure. Your hearing loss, has it progressed any since your last jury service?
It's pretty stable. I haven't had any change in it other than just age for years.
Okay. Is it tinnitus? Is that what it is? Is it ringing?
Yes.
Okay, but what we're going to do is on Monday as we go through jury selection, if it proves to be a situation where it's not doing enough so that you can hear everything that's going on, then we'll ask you again. You can let us know, okay? We'll give it this try and see if this will work for you. Okay? Thank you. We'll see you at 9:30 Monday. Report to the jury assembly room downstairs. They'll bring you up at the appropriate time. Do not communicate about the case. Do not do any research, and please do not listen to or read any news accounts of the trial.
I understand.
We'll see you on Monday.
Thank you. Bye.
You may be seated. I think you indicated you believe you know something about the case, but also you want to speak to me about hardship. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, let's start with knowledge of the case. Do you know something, or you believe you know something about the case based on something you may have read or seen in the news?
Yes,
Okay, was that in the past or recently?
past.
Okay, when we talk past, how long ago?
I don't remember. I've seen the episode of Cops, and I know it's a retrial.
Juror 89.
Mr. Barrett, if you could just kind of come up to that standing mic right there, and counsel, you may be seated. I think you indicated that you believe you might know something about it was the state side. Okay, Mr. Barrett, we're going to go ahead and release you from jury service in this case. You do not need to come back on Monday. You need to just go downstairs, turn the juror badge in, and you're discharged. Do not discuss anything with the other jurors. Have a pleasant weekend.
Thank you.
Juror 810.
Ms. Marvel, if you just come right up to this microphone that's standing there. Counsel, you may be seated. I believe you indicated you think you know something about the case, but also you need to speak to me about hardship. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, we'll start with the knowledge. Do you believe you know something about this case based on things you may have seen or read in the news?
Correct.
Okay. Was that recently or in the past?
In the past.
Okay. When we say past, how long ago?
When this happened, at the time I was the caregiver of my grandmother, and she was in her 80s. And every night I'd cook dinner for her, and we'd watch the news, and also Nancy Grace. So we were very exposed to this case, or I was.
Okay. And did you see it on Nancy Grace also?
I believe so, if my memory serves me correctly.
Okay. Let me just ask this question. Have you reached any opinions or conclusions about the case based on what you've seen or read?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And that opinion is?
That the defendant is guilty.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to release you from jury service in this case.
Okay.
You do not need to come back on Monday. Just simply turn your juror badge in downstairs. Please do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, and River Weekend. Juror 91.
Mr. Cooper? All right, counsel may be seated. Mr. Cooper, I believe you indicated you thought you knew something about the case and also you wanted to speak to me about a hardship, correct?
Correct, sir.
All right, let's talk about knowledge first. Do you believe you know something about this case based on things you may have seen or read in the newspaper or on TV?
Both.
Both. Was that recently or in the past or both?
Both.
Okay. When we say past, how long ago?
Probably a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago. Have you been keeping up with the case since then?
Not religiously, but it was pretty well covered.
Okay. Do you know what's been happening with the case over these few years?
As far as I can remember, that it's come down from a higher court to be tried again, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. We're going to go ahead and release you from jury service in this case. You will not have to come back on Monday. All you have to do is go downstairs, turn your juror badge in downstairs. You're released. Please do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Juror 9-2.
Mr. Grunwald, if you just come up to that standing mic right there. Counsel, you may be seated. I think you indicated that you may know something about the case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that based on things you may have seen or read in the news?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that recently or in the past?
Well, both in the past and recently.
Okay. And we say in the past. Is that, how far back in the past are we talking?
Back during the original trial, I had read some news reports about it back then.
Okay.
As well as, the follow-up when her conviction was overturned based on, I believe it was jury tampering, some information that was, I don't know who conveyed it, but apparently the jurors were told that she had attempted to poison her husband with antifreeze.
Okay, so you've heard of all that since...
Heard of all that, yeah.
All right, so we're going to release you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. All you have to do is go downstairs, turn your juror badge in on the first floor where you started this morning, and just do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Juror 9-4.
I think it's Mr. Counsel may be seated. Is it Lampinen? Okay, I think you indicated, sir, that you may know something about the case. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the hardship, but...
Okay, yeah, I'm going to get to the hardship too. So you wanted to speak to me about knowledge of the case and also hardship. Let me start with knowledge of the case. Do you believe you know something about this case based on what you may have seen or read in the news?
I don't remember about seeing, but I communicated with, I think the arrest, if I remember correctly, went down in the building. About being arrested for trying to hire someone to kill her husband.
Okay. I'm going to come back to that in just one moment, but other than talking about it with the secretary, have you read anything in the news about it since then or since then?
It would have been just on TV.
Okay, on television. So you did see some things on television. Okay. And did you see things on television back then and also now, or just back then?
Just back then.
Okay. So you saw things on television back then. Have you seen or read anything? When we say back then, we're talking back in 2009? Is that
correct?
Okay. Since 2009, have you seen or read anything about the case?
Other than, for some reason, I was suspect when I was came over the walkway and seeing cameras down below that this was coming up. I can't remember hearing about, whether I saw it on the news or why I would have thought of that. But
okay, when you say you were suspect, you mean you're coming into the courthouse for jury duty, you
yes.
saw TV vans outside?
Right, correct.
Okay, and that caused you to think you were coming here for this case?
That it could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would lead you to that conclusion if you didn't read or hear anything about the case recently in jury selection?
I'm not sure. I've got a kind of a poor memory. I got a lot of work going on, but
okay. Local news about this case?
I can't recall. I wish I was sharper on that.
Okay, and I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
We just kind of have to explore
right.
what you know or think you know about the case, and really more importantly, what impact that could have in the case.
My wife That's hard to say. I would say probably not.
When
But-
you say probably not, there leaves room for a maybe yes. So let me ask. Let me restate it this way. Instead of conclusions, sometimes conclusions is too strong a statement. Let me ask it this way. Based on all of that, what you spoke with the secretary about, what you spoke to your wife about, those matters which you've seen on television, have you reached any opinions about the case? Or do you have any preconceived notions about the case?
Well, I wish I could answer that just.
You're required to answer a particular way. In other words, I should tell the judge what the judge wants to hear. Nothing could be further from the truth. When we ask you about how you feel, or whether you've reached conclusions or you have opinions, whatever they are, they are. All we need are truthful answers to those questions. We're not judging the response in terms of whether you should or should not. We just want to know how you feel.
I understand.
So I'm going to circle back around. You say you've got some feelings about the case. I really need to explore that. What are your feelings about the case? Let me ask it this way. Do you have any feelings concerning whether or not, based on what you have talked about and what you have read or heard, do you have any feelings at this time about the case about whether Ms. Dippolito is guilty or innocent in the case? Do you have any feelings about it?
Yeah, I have a leaning, and that's trying to be really honest. I'd say no. I'd like to feel that I could come in here and start all over and have
That's fine.
nothing.
And so just you're leaning, so are you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No,
That's
I'm
the last
leaning
thing
more toward guilt.
That's what I want to know. Is that where you're leaning? Okay. So that's what we need to know. And I apologize for taking the time to go through that, but we kind of have to explore these things. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to excuse you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. All you have to do is turn your juror badge in, and we'll do that on the first floor where you started. And just don't talk about the case with any of the other potential jurors on the way out, okay?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
For a while, have you followed the case?
I have.
Okay, and can you tell me what you know about what's been happening in the case for the last few years, based on what you've been following?
Well, one of the things that, the case is up again, and one of the things struck me was the notion of reality TV show kind of thinking, and so that's one thing that I noticed.
When you say up again, what do you mean?
That there was a position that the rationale for actions taken was because of a reality TV show.
Okay, and where did you get that knowledge? Is that something you may have seen on television, read about?
I can't recall if it was from TV or from newspaper articles.
Okay, in terms of, you indicated that you've been following the case for a while, a few years. In terms of the progress in court, have you been keeping up on what's been happening, if anything, in court?
No.
Okay. And based on, before we get into the details of what you may have read or seen or heard, based on what you've read, seen, or heard either recently or in the past, have you reached any conclusions about the case?
I have.
Okay, and what is that conclusion?
Based on what I've read and what I've seen in the TV, I think she's guilty.
Okay, thank you very much. That's what we needed to know. We're going to go ahead and excuse you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. All you have to do is turn your juror badge in on the first floor, and you're discharged. Just don't discuss anything about the case on your way out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Juror 9-6.
So Humphrey, if you could come down to the standing microphone there. Counsel, you may be seated. If I wrote this down correctly, you do not know anything about the case, but you want to speak to me about a hardship. Is that right?
A hardship, and just an issue, Your Honor.
An issue, okay. Can you tell me what that is?
When my son is 37 now, and many years ago, when he was a teenager, there was an accident with a few of his friends, and a gun went off, and one of the kids was killed. He was about 15.
Okay.
It was an accident, declared that by the, I guess the jury system, or not a jury system, but the judge who looked it over. A couple of years later, he was busted for less than an ounce of marijuana. Because of his previous circumstances, he went to jail for 2 years for a very small amount of marijuana. And it ruined his life. And to this day, he's 37. Still an issue. It's on his record. Comes up when he needs a job, comes up when he rents an apartment. It just, it affected my whole family.
Okay.
And that's my story. It just makes me very uncomfortable being here. I was there when they took him away in handcuffs, and that's what I have to say.
Okay, well, let me kind of follow up on that a little bit.
Sure.
It sounds as if you're raising this issue and letting us know about this because you may have some negative feelings about the judicial system. Is that correct?
I have positive and negative feelings.
Okay. And the question becomes how those feelings may or may not affect these proceedings in this case. Obviously, your son's situation is different than what we're here for today.
Of course.
And the question becomes, is
because the last time I was in a facility like this, listening to him and before with his mother next to me and them taking him away by hand for nothing.
Okay, so
just freaking me out.
So you just being here in the courthouse is causing you some anxiety then?
It's causing me some anxiety.
Okay. All right. That anxiety that you're feeling, is that something that's going to
Mr.
Dragona, if you could come up to that standing mic for me, and counsel, you may be seated. I think you indicated that you might know something about the case, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and is that based on things you may have seen or read in the paper? Or
Yes.
on the news?
Yes.
Okay. Was that recently or in the past?
In the past?
Okay, how far in the past?
A couple of years ago, maybe?
Okay, a couple of years ago. We had talked in that statement that I read to you, events which allegedly occurred in 2009. Would it be that far back or after?
I don't remember exactly. I mean, it was definitely a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was
Okay.
4 years ago, if it was 6 years ago. It was a couple of years when the trial, everything was going on.
When the trial was going on, what do you mean by that?
Well, I remember seeing the video on the news. So I was just reading about the case, and I just remember that from.
Well, when you're reading about the case, you mentioned a video, but you also used the word trial. I'm just wondering why you used the word trial.
When everything was going on, when they were talking, when the case was going on, and I guess the news was showing, aspects of the case, the video, and they were talking about, all the different facts about the case. I didn't see the trial, obviously.
But you believe there was a previous trial, based on what you saw?
Just when everything was going on, and they were talking about, the video of the defendant, with the police, with the Boynton Beach police, when she found out that her husband was killed. I mean, all that stuff was when all that was going on. That's what I'm talking about.
But when you're talking about that, is that what you're referring to as a trial?
No.
No. Okay, but you also referred to a trial.
I'm assuming. I mean, when all this was going on, this was when the case was in. Maybe the word trial wasn't the right. word, but I mean, when all this was going on, when the case was in the news, is what I'm referring to.
When it was in the news, okay, all right. And I'll explore that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But in addition to seeing or reading things about the case a few years ago, have you read or seen anything about the case recently?
No.
Okay. Based on what you saw or read in the past. Did you reach any conclusions about the case?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that conclusion?
That she was guilty.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and release you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. All you have to do is turn that juror badge in downstairs on the first floor where we started. Please don't discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Juror 9-7 or 9-8?
9-8, okay. Is it Augustinello or Nelly? Okay, you may be seated, counsel. I believe you indicated, you can stand right there at that microphone, it's fine. We just want to make sure we can hear you. I think you indicated, one, that you know something or believe you know something about the case, but also you want to talk about hardship, is that right? Yes. Let's start with your knowledge. Do you know or you believe you know anything about this case based on things you may have read or seen in the news?
I've seen in the news, I remember when the case was initially presented with videos that were presented on the situation at that time. And that's the thing that I knew before being called for jury duty.
Okay, let me explore that just a little bit. You said a couple of things. When it was initially presented, what do you mean by that?
When the first time that the news came out, I think back in 2009 or something like that, is when, again, it was on the news, and there were certain videos that were presented at that time.
Okay. So back in 2009, when the alleged events first occurred, you saw news coverage of it at that time, is that right?
And again, I think it was 2009 because I learned the date from what you said, but it was when the first time came, that was many years ago.
Okay, so moving forward from that time, have you continued to read or see things about the case since then? All right. Do you know what's happened with the case since then?
No, the only thing that I saw was the day before jury duty yesterday. There was a coverage on anticipating that something was going to happen, and that was the only thing that I learned after that initial viewing of the TV show, or the news also.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, back in 2009 or whenever the alleged events first occurred, you saw news coverage of it at that time.
Correct.
And then the next time you recall seeing news coverage of it would be the day before you were coming in for jury service. You saw it on the television.
Correct.
In addition to seeing it on the television, did you read anything about the case?
No.
All right. Now, before we get into specifically what you saw, either back in 2009 or the day before you came in for jury service, based on what you did see back then or even right before you came in, have you reached any conclusions about the case?
Until the day before the jury duty, I thought that that case was already closed, and what I saw back that time was what was defined.
All right, let me just explore that. Okay, all right. We're going to go ahead and release you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday.
Okay.
All you have to do is go downstairs, turn in that juror badge on the first floor. Do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Juror 9-9.
Is it Mr. Doty or Dottie?
Mr. Doty.
Doty. Mr. Doty, counsel may be seated. I believe you indicated that you may know something about the case. Is that right?
Yes. Her ex-husband is a client of my son-in-law.
Okay, so let me just ask a couple of, well, I got to get two before I can. With regard to the case itself, we'll talk about that relationship in just a moment. So do you know her former husband?
Well, my son-in-law does, and from the time this case went down, the family spoke about it.
Okay, so let me kind of jump to an ultimate question here before finding out any more about what you may have read in the paper or seen on television. Based on that fact that there was discussion about it with your son-in-law, have you reached conclusions about the case already?
Pretty much absolutely.
Okay, so tell me what that conclusion is.
Well, we'd be guilty.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and excuse you from jury service in this case. You will not have to come back on Monday. All you have to do is turn that juror badge in on the first floor where you started this morning. Do not discuss anything with the other jurors on the way out.
You got it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a great weekend.
Juror 9-10.
Okay, Mr. Brocato, if you could just come down to this standing mic right there, and counsel, you may be seated. All right, I think you indicated that you know something about the case. You also indicated that you may have a hardship. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's start with the knowledge. Do you think you know something about this case based on things you may have seen or read in the news?
Newspaper and TV.
Okay, both. Okay, is that recently or in the past?
Well, my wife got hooked on the trial when it began 5-6 years ago and began telling me all the details and carrying on, so.
Okay. All right, we're going to release you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. What you have to do is go downstairs, first floor where you started, turn that juror badge in, and just please don't discuss anything with the other potential jurors on the way out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Juror 10-2.
Is it Ms. Joinsu? Okay, I was close anyway. Counsel may be seated. I believe you indicated that you might know something about the case. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and is that based on things you may have seen or read in the news?
Yes.
All right, is that recently or in the past or both?
Both.
All right, so when we say past, how far back are we talking?
Like maybe a month ago.
Like I just read a little
Oh, a
bit.
month ago, okay.
Yeah.
Let me define it this way. Prior to this year,
Oh, no.
you've not seen or read anything about the case? Okay. So what you know about the case or believe you know about the case is based on what you've seen this year, perhaps a month ago. Did you see anything this past week about the case?
Yes. I read about it before I came to jury duty.
All right, so right before you came in for jury duty, you read something about the case, and was that in the Palm Beach Post? Where'd you read it? Okay. All right. Now let me ask you this question. Based on what you read or heard about the case, have you reached any conclusions about the case?
I guess, yeah.
Okay, well, it's okay. It's okay to have an opinion or a conclusion. And what conclusion have you reached?
I think the appeal is a little ridiculous, and I think she deserves the sentence that she got, that she got charged.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate your opinion. We're going to go ahead and release you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. What I need you to do is just go back downstairs to the first floor where you started. You can let them know I've let you go and just turn in that juror badge, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Juror 10-4.
Ms. Olson, if you can come up to that standing mic right there, I'd appreciate it. Counsel, you may be seated. I believe you indicated that you thought you might know something about the case and also you might have a hardship in the case. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, let's start with the knowledge. Do you believe you know something about the case based on what you have either read or heard in the news?
Yes, I remember when the case was first brought about. I remember it very well. And of course, the cops episode, I have teenage boys and my brother-in-law's a police officer, so it's something very familiar to me.
Okay, when it was first brought about, what are you referring to there?
When it was first on TV.
Okay, back in 2009?
Yes.
Okay. Have you followed the case since then?
Yes, I have.
Okay, do you know what's been happening or what has happened in the case?
Pretty familiar, yes.
Okay, can you tell me just kind of generally what you know about the case, what's happened with the case, or what's been happening with the case?
I know that there's an appeal process going on.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, ma'am. We're going to go ahead and release you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. Simply go to the first floor where you started, turn in the juror badge, you're discharged. Please do not discuss. I don't think there's too many more folks left out there. You're kind of towards the end, but I think there's at least 2 out there, so don't discuss anything with anyone on the way out. Thank you, ma'am. Have a good weekend.
Juror 10-5.
Is it Mr. Dvorsny? I'm not sure I got that right. Counsel, you may be seated. I think you had indicated 2 things. Number one, I think you raised your hand when I asked about folks that might know something about the case, and also you want to speak to me about a hardship. We're going to start with knowledge. Do you believe you know something about the case based on things that may have been written in the paper or that you've seen on television?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Was that in the past or recently?
In the past.
Okay. How far back in the past?
I'm a resident of the city of Boynton Beach, so pretty much since the original report started.
Back in 2009?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you kept track of the case going forward since then? You know what's been happening in the case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you just kind of briefly tell me what you're aware of?
I'm aware that the defendant paid an undercover Boynton Beach police officer an amount of money to have her husband murdered, and the subsequent part of the Boynton Beach police staging a fake crime scene, and the defendant's defense of wanting to be a reality TV star.
Okay. In terms of the progression of the case since then to now, in terms of the judicial proceedings, have you kept track of those? Or do you know what's been going on?
No, I have not.
Okay. Based on what, before we get specifically to what you may have read or heard or seen, based on what you read, what you've heard, or what you've seen about the case in the news, have you reached any conclusions about the case?
I have not.
No conclusions. Okay, do you have any opinions about the case based on those things that you've seen?
I do not.
Okay, do you have any preconceived notions about the case based on what you have read, heard, or seen?
I feel I might have a conflict of interest.
Explain what you mean by that.
I'm running for City Commissioner of Boynton Beach District 2 this March, and I just had a meeting with Police Chief Katz last week at the League of Cities meeting in Boynton Beach. I'm very involved. I'm on the CRA Advisory Board for the City of Boynton Beach, so I will have a opportunity to meet with Chief Katz in a week or two and take a trip in his cruiser and get to know a little bit about the heart of Boynton.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and release you from jury service in this case. You're not going to have to come back on Monday. All you have to do is go to the first floor, turn in that juror badge, and you're discharged. I think we only have Mr. Martinez waiting outside, but please don't discuss anything about the case with Mr. Martinez.
Thank you.
Juror 10-6. You should go right down.
Mr. Martinez, you can just come forward to that standing mic right there, and counsel, you may be seated. Mr. Martinez, I believe you indicated that you might know something about the case. Is that right?
Your Honor, during 2009, I was deployed to the Middle East in Iraq. So looking at the news, I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I just wanted to raise my hand so I could be honest.
Okay, that's fine. First of all, thank you for your service, but beyond that, so you were not in the country in 2009?
That's correct, sir. Okay,
so let me ask you a couple of things. I don't know what kind of news coverage you get when you're stationed overseas, so let me ask a couple things. Do you recall specifically reading or seeing on the news anything about the case?
This is the thing that I'm just a little hesitant about, because I might have heard something about it with the news. With the facts that you gave, I am not 100% sure, Your Honor.
All right, so something about the facts that I read to you sounded familiar to you?
Yes, correct.
Okay, but beyond that, can you pinpoint it to anything? You recall reading anything about the case? Do you recall seeing anything on television about the case?
If this is the correct, what I've seen is supposed to be a videotaping of a news channel, and the person was advised that the husband, I think, was murdered, and everything was caught on video, and that's the only thing that if this is what it is, then I've seen the newsreel on that, Your Honor.
Okay. And would that have been back in 2009 when you were stationed overseas?
That's correct. That might have been.
Have you seen that video or anything about the case since then?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. And have you read anything about the case since then?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Now, based on what you do recall seeing, did you reach any conclusions about the case?
I didn't follow through, to be honest with you. I was too busy with my life and my career.
Survival, probably.
Yes,
okay. All right. So, and even since then, though, coming back, have you reached any conclusions about the case based on what you saw before?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have any opinions about the case based on what you saw before, the video?
I haven't even thought about it, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have any preconceived notions about the case based on what you saw?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Do you have any opinions, conclusions, or preconceived notions concerning whether or not Ms. Dippolito is guilty or not based on what you saw?
No, I don't think so, Your Honor.
Okay, when you say I don't think so, just a little ambiguity. I just want to make sure, and so I'll tell you why I'm asking the question. I want to make sure some people will see something and then they're going to have a leaning or a feeling towards guilt or innocence, either one. I just want to make sure, based on what you have seen and what you recall seeing, have you reached any opinion at all, one way or the other, about whether or not Ms. Dippolito is guilty or not guilty in this case?
Well, let me give you a little background about myself, Your Honor. I was a former military, former law enforcement officer. So, and also I continue to work for the government and all that stuff. So to me, I just got to go by the facts. And, you know, I don't form an opinion until I have facts.
Okay, so that kind of leads to the next question I need to ask you. What you're going to be called to do if you're selected for jury service in this case is you're going to have to decide the case based on the evidence, and only the evidence is presented here in this courtroom and the law that I instruct you on during the course of the case. In other words, anything you may have seen about the case outside of court, you have to set that completely aside and decide this case based solely on the evidence presented here. Can you do that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, I'm going to let the attorneys ask a few follow-up questions. Any from the state? Okay, Mr. Claypool.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Your candor today. Does your prior law enforcement career kind of lean you in favor of the police department in this case?
What I have to say, sir, is I'm pro-police. Okay, I'm pro-police. So, but it's just like everything else when it comes to a law enforcement officer. You have, you know, you have one side, you have two sides, and you have the truth. And that's how I follow my career as a law enforcement officer. So you have one side, you have two different stories, and then you have to, as a law enforcement officer, you have to find that truth.
Do you have because this case involves the police department, do you know that?
Kind of, yes. Excuse me?
Point Beach Police Department, have you heard of them?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. This case is going to involve some of the conduct of officers at the Point Beach Police Department. So my question to you is, do you feel that going into the case you might have some bias in favor of the police department before we can start the case?
I don't know if it's bias. I understand what police officers do. I have walked in their shoes. I don't know if that's called bias. I cannot answer that because I don't know any police officers at the Boynton Police Department. So, but what I'm saying is I'm pro-police. So I understand what police officers actually do on a daily basis and the hard work that they do. So I don't know if I'm answering your questions correctly. Okay.
It's not an easy question. I guess what we're trying to get at is we want to make sure that we have jurors in the case.
Absolutely.
Who are fair and impartial, and that
absolutely.
When we start the trial, we have a level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, level fair playing field, and if we're doing a 100-yard dash, that neither side gets a 5 or 10-yard head start. So if you can maybe quantify it that way and tell me, would the state have a little bit of a head start?
To answer your question straight to the point, sir, I will be very fair and I will follow the law.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, Ms. Martinez, I'm sorry, there's always someone that's last, and you were the last one here. You had to wait around all day. I do apologize for that. But we are going to ask you to come back 9:30 on Monday to continue jury selection. What you need to do is when you come back, you're going to check in downstairs in the jury assembly room. You'll stay there until they bring you up, or we'll send someone down to get you. Just a couple of reminders. Do not communicate with anyone about the case. Do not do any research with respect to the case, and do not listen to or read any news accounts of the trial. Absolutely. Have a pleasant weekend. We're going to see you on Monday.
Thank you, Your Honor. Appreciate it.
Okay, I believe that's everyone. Is that correct? I do this a couple more times, I might even get a little faster. Okay. Well, we'll consider what we have, I guess, at this point. Monday, if you file your motion, I'll take it up, the motion on change of venue. I'll have to consider that on Monday. That'll be a written motion. What I know I have to consider in addition to that at this point is I have additional evidence that you want to present on the motion to dismiss, kind of the Arizona versus Youngblood issue that we discussed before. So we're going to take additional evidence on that you do not believe I've heard before or considered before. I think there's a motion to suppress, which we'll try to work in. I think you indicated it won't take long. I don't know what the state's perspective is going to be on that, because they may want to call witnesses, may not. I don't know. I'm assuming you're relying upon statements that were made in the past in deposition or trial transcripts. So I'm not sure. The state will have to look at that, decide how they want to present their side of it. And then I'm assuming, based on what I've been told, that there will be a motion for change of venue filed. You've given me an Ori Tennis motion, I suppose, which I'm not going to rule on now, but I think those are the three matters I have to take up before I continue with jury selection, or at least are on the table for me to take up before jury selection. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else I need to do this evening before we break? Defense? Okay. Okay, then we'll be in recess until 8:30 now. 8:30 means 8:30, guys. Be here at 8:30, because I want to try to get these preliminary matters concluded as quickly as possible, so I don't have, some of you know, Mr. Rosenfeld, Mr. Williams, Ms. Laurie, know my feelings about wasting juror time. So it's one of my pet peeves. So I don't want to leave them standing around too long outside while I'm doing, matters in here. Okay. All right, we're in recess then until 8:30 on